Good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Julian, and I am the director for the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University. And I would like to welcome you to our third and final segment of really looking at recruitment and onboarding processes for adult education. This series is brought to you by the Adult Education Advisory Committee's Ad Hoc Committee on Recruitment and Onboarding, and we are very excited to have you with us today. Today with us, or the programs you're going to get to hear from, is Dawn Fintman and Maggie Wolf are going to be sharing and answering our questions for us today. And as your moderator today is Brittany Boston. So as we get started, I do want to go through just a couple little housekeeping items because we want to hear from you as we move through these questions. So you have two options. One, there's a question box, and it might be labeled as a chat box or a question box, depending on if you are on an iPad or if you are on a PC. So go to that chat question box and you can write any question that you'd like and add that in, and we'll be pausing for questions after the first three questions and then pausing for questions again at the end. In addition to that, if you would like to, and if you're confident and comfortable with your microphone, please raise your hand, your little virtual hand there, and we will unmute you and you'll be able to contribute and engage in dialogue in that way. These are designed to be a dialogue, a conversation, a discussion. And so with that, I'm going to hand the floor over to Brittany to get us started. So thank you all so very much for being with us this morning.
Yes, so good morning, everyone. So we will go ahead and jump in. We're going to do this as a sort of panelist conversation, but like Amy said, we want to hear from you and the questions that you have. So to start off, how have your marketing strategies changed as a result of the pandemic? And we will go in alphabetical order here, and Dawn, we'll start with you and then hand it over to Maggie.
Sure, thank you. One of the things that we did prior to the pandemic that has helped us through is we got outside funding for the GED test. We serve two of the poorest zip codes in the state, and it's just a huge need. And so we went to the Community Foundation for Peoria. We partnered with county provider groups because they can write into their grant, we will pay for their GED if they qualify. And so we found all this outside funding, and then the ICC Foundation found us some money as well and put us on their fundraising efforts. And so for this year in the pandemic, that has been so incredibly important as our students just do not have the funds, even at the reduced rate that the state is providing to get that GED. So we have secured $6,000 for this year. We've already gone through half. And so these students are ready to take the test, and we're moving them through with that. So that's one of the biggest things. We also are implementing TargetX, and TargetX is a customer relationship management system. And we can market through that, find out who didn't show up to testing, reach back out to them to get them in. We are just now getting on board with that, so I'm excited about how that will even increase our enrollment. Because we have those two zip codes that are the poorest in the state, we've done a really high concentration of focusing in on that index of need in that area. And I have to say that from that, we are up 11% this year in those two zip codes, which is a great thing for this area.
Okay, thank you so much. Maggie, if you'd like to share.
11%, Dawn. Wow, that's amazing.
Thanks.
So we actually, our whole process is online. So to register for our program is through the college's website, and once students identify as adult ed, all of the questions we need for the grant autofill. And the reason I'm saying that is because I'm going to piggyback on what Dawn said. We too use TargetX, and we use it through the college's system. So we do the same thing. We reach out to, I'm getting a lot of feedback here. I'm going to take my headphones out. So We work a lot with the college. We work with our marketing. We do a lot of online stuff. We do a lot of technology. We do Twitter, Facebook, all of that. But really the key to what we're doing, like I said, is everything's holistic. Everything's married to the college. So we are using TargetX. And Dawn, you said a great point, right? You said the college actually then can run reports. These are the people who have started an application. These are the people who need to finish an application. All of those things are done through TargetX, which gives us an edge in terms of reaching out to those folks and saying, hey, finish what's going on. We're here for you. We want to meet you where you are. We've also done a lot with lending out technology everything's through the college here. And that's by design. So we did a lot with having technology available and making sure our students knew we had technology available. So really the marketing strategies are more holistic in terms of just kind of everything. Now we did come in after we got a letter from the ICCB, and in one day we did 4 things. So we did TargetX, Facebook, we did an email blast, and we did a text blast. And we did have quite an uptick in terms of people reaching out to us. So I'm anxious to see how that's going to translate as we move forward. That's it.
Awesome. Great information, guys. And you touched base a little bit on this next question when talking about TargetX, I believe is what the application is called, correct?
Yes.
But what effective strategies have you implemented to onboard or recruit students, considering the ongoing mitigations related to the pandemic? And so we'll switch it up this time, and we'll start with Maggie first, and then head to Dawn.
Well, and I kind of did already touch on this, right? But the recruiting of students it's not for us, it's not so much the recruiting, it's the retention, it's the persistence. So we are really leaning on our one-stop partners and all the services that they can bring to bear with respect to, the mitigation. So with respect to if folks come to us and they have a hard time paying their rent, or they're in need of childcare services, which we know all of these things right now are, spotty at best. But we're doing what we can by reaching out to our one-stop and beyond that, even our community resources.
And I can piggyback off that too. Our partner relationships are really key. I talked about this, I think, on another panel, maybe last school year. Every day runs into the next. But I talked about how, obviously with our WEO partners, we're mandated to share information and get those helps. But what I found is when I went to those county provider groups, and there was something called the Hope Network and the Homeless Continuum, and those types of things that are not necessarily in those agency partnerships for WIOA, but boy, are they very valuable. And so I think the most effective strategy that we found was I would just call these folks and just say, hey, here's all of our information. Again, want to remind them, because I think in a pandemic we get lost in just trying to survive. So we reminded them often, hey, this is what we've got going. Let us put a few people on the next, enrollment date for you. And that I have caseworkers and managers calling and emailing me all the time. And so that's certainly really helped.
Yes, absolutely. And Dawn, that's a great point, especially during this time when, we're not sure if services are being provided or if a center is open, closed, where it stands. So putting yourself out there and your program out there and just reminding people that, hey, we are here, we are still providing services. Absolutely.
Onboard more students also because we made a partnership with the testing center at the college. And so not only did our testing team were testing, we also had options for students who didn't have computers to do remote testing to go to the testing center, and that really helped too.
Great, fantastic. Okay, so we'll go to question 3, and then after this question, I'll open it up for questions from participants or the audience. So please go ahead and start thinking about those and get those into the chat feature. But what did your students need to be ready for learning? So Dawn, we'll start with you and then head to Maggie. I got to keep you guys on your toes here.
Yes, that's right. That's right. One of the things that we found that the students need was just those basic necessities. Everything had kind of stopped. Daycare was a problem because the children weren't going to school. And so we found that there was a need for those just basic essential living skill situations. Of course, if you think about our program, the biggest hurt was technology, access to broadband, access to technology and laptops. The CARES Act certainly helped that. We took advantage of that. We got laptops into the hands of those students that were the hardest hit. We also did in-person multiple day orientations. Of course, we had to do multiple days because we could only have so many in the classroom at a time. We still were remote, but we offered those in-person orientations with technology. We did a lot of that for ESL. And then our transition staff really stepped up and helped with providing additional trainings for Blackboard.
Well, Dawn, like you, we bought laptops. We bought a laptop cart, and we use that also to lend out to students as well as Wi-Fi, personal Wi-Fi's. And that really helped. So we too were distance learning, but our first session for all the students was to come in following all social distancing protocols. Come in, meet your teacher, and go through the technology, go through what is required, feel comfortable with it. Now that we tended to persist with students who are at a little bit higher level, which I think, the data will bear out eventually. But at this point, we've been fairly successful with that. Like I said, I'm not sure how we're going to do with the lower level students, but it is there if they need it. Now we do allow students to come in to classes if they request a meeting with their teacher. Again, following all requirements. So we haven't like shut the doors and locked people out. They can come in if they need to. So that's what's happening. And now, like I said, our initial numbers were low. We have seen an increase in that since we implemented a more direct and more strategic marketing policy. But I'm waiting for that to see what the data looks on that, probably the end of this week.
Right. And we also partnered with computer labs across the city. Some churches had computer labs, of course, the libraries, but there was the Urban League and Friendship House, Baptist Church. If they had a computer lab, they were willing to open that up. And then the college did open a couple of their own computer labs for students to come in and work. And it was monitored. So if they had a question, they could ask a staff member.
Great, that's fantastic. Awesome partnership there and use of resources for sure. So I will give it a moment here, and if anyone has any questions, you can type those in the questions or chat box, or if you are confident in your microphone, you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you and you can communicate your question that way. So I will just give it a few seconds, a nice little relaxing moment of silence here to see if anyone has any questions. Okay, well, I am not seeing any come in, but please feel free to, as you're thinking of them, type those in there, and we will get to those here in a moment. But to keep the train moving here, we'll jump to question 4. What strategies have been successful with your instructors regarding instruction, retention, and outcomes? So Maggie, we'll start with you.
Honestly, I think it was support. I think it was being honest with them and saying, look, guys, we're all in this together. I'm going to learn right along with you, and it's going to be fine. So, and also working, with people's individual talents and skill sets. So I have a couple of instructors who are very, very technologically savvy. So we leaned on them, bring forth what you know, share with us what you know, right? So that's what we did. But the biggest thing I think that I did as a director was to say, hey guys, nobody's going to come at you with fists out. We're in this together. We're going to figure this out together. And I think, honestly, that seems to be what has worked for us.
Maggie, I agree with that. We still met quarterly, but in the beginning, we met weekly. And then I called all 20 of my teachers and talked to them one-on-one, took notes, followed up. But at the end of the day, I just said, we have to give each other grace, grace to fail, grace to get back up and to keep going. One of the things that I was so proud of our college for doing is they have a teaching and learning center, and they really stepped up their offerings by helping these teachers with Zoom. The Professional Development Institute, which is at our college, also was doing many trainings and things like that. Our system, we were already on Blackboard, but some of the teachers didn't know how to use the journal entries and how to use all the different arms and elements of that system. And so they really stepped up and helped our staff do that. And I think once they felt more comfortable, then they were more successful in that class. In the beginning, our retention just tanked. After 7.5 hours to that 12-hour piece, we would just lose. We were losing them by the 10, 20, 30%. And so we talked to them about better engagement strategies, and that seemed to help with that retention long haul.
Wonderful. Thank you guys for sharing. Okay, one more question and then we'll open it up again, and I may have a few surprise questions up my sleeve too. We'll see here. So what supportive services were you able to implement for your staff? Was it as helpful as you had hoped? So Don, I'll go to you first and then over to Maggie.
Well, like I previously mentioned on the last question, our college has the Teaching and Learning Center, which is always open to staff members. And then of course the Professional Development Institute did a lot of great trainings, formal trainings. And that was really great supportive services. Like I said, I called our teachers. I lost 7 teachers and 1 coordinator. That's a huge hit. And I understood. I wasn't upset with them. They will be back when we're in person. And I respect their decisions, and that's nothing that we could have foreseen or done anything about. So you just have to go in it with a little bit of grace, and that support services, when you hear them and see them, you're going to get a lot better results out of your instructors. The college offered mental health trainings and how to, tackle some of those Zoom fatigue and things like that. So we participated in all of those. And I think that that also helped, because we felt like we were all in the same boat. We're rowing the same way. We've got friends. We're not alone. And that seemed to really help.
So Don, we too have a Center for Teaching and Learning, and same thing, amazingly helpful. We use Canvas, so we put everything on Canvas. So, our teachers weren't used to that. So there was a lot of engagement there, a lot of workshops. So very grateful for those folks. We also, the PDN, right? I mean, the PDN was doing things constantly, thank goodness, to support us. So that was incredibly beneficial. I think everything's helpful. Even if you try to implement something and it doesn't do well, right? What do? We step back and we say, okay, why didn't that work? What was good? What was bad? Can we tweak? So I'm someone who's always going to say that even if it wasn't overtly helpful, it is always a learning moment for us.
A step in the right direction.
Exactly.
Well, wonderful. Thank you guys so much. And so I will say to participants on the call, those are all our panel questions, but if you have questions or comments, please go ahead and feel free to put that in your questions and chat feature or raise your hand. Don and Maggie, I do have a question for the two of you. With the pandemic, we have all had to shift gears here and kind of look at things outside of the box and be innovative on how we reach our students and continue to engage our students. So were there strategies that, whether it was for support services or engagement via technology, are there strategies that were new that even once we go back to in-person learning, you plan to continue to implement within your programs?
I don't ever think our program will look as it did before the pandemic. I really don't. And I don't think it should, really. I think that I really feel like if the class, what we're doing in the classroom does not reflect what is happening out in the real world, we are irrelevant anyway. So I think this was just kind of a kick in the backside in the right direction. And we're gonna maybe create a menu of opportunities for students and really meet them where they are.
Right, and when they want to come in. You know, ours is fixed entry, you know, 4 times a year. So we have every 8 weeks. But what we started to do in the middle of those 8 weeks was offer this little jumpstart class. And so they meet 5-6 times, but they have to have at least 12 hours in order to count to get to that next 8 weeks. And so we started doing, you know, little things like that to allow people to come in. But with the pandemic, we had this option to do online anytime. And we always had that with iPathways, but we needed to formalize a little bit more. We would have 2 or 3 sessions on Zoom, and then we would let them go and do that. And so we implemented a lot more of those online anytime classes where students could come in and be onboarded on a Thursday afternoon and start, you know, after their orientation and be going, you know, that following Monday. And I think, like Maggie said, we're not going to go back to the same. I found teachers that do not want to teach in person anymore. They love online and they are good at it. And so we'll offer online Zoom classes scheduled and online anytime and hybrid and in person. And so I think that's just adds to the value of the program and how we can move to gain more enrollment.
I think the days of we don't do it that way are gone.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay.
Proven it. That's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's all in how you look at it and all in how you approach it.
So we were fortunate. We did something a couple of years ago that has benefited us here, and it wasn't obviously who could have predicted a pandemic, but we actually we implemented an entire online process, an intake process. And like I said earlier, so if somebody comes in, they contact us, they want to be in the program, we send them the application link from the college. Once they identify, we upload, we get everything that we need for our grant. The cool thing about this too is we're kind of tweaking it now because of Daisy 2.0, but up until that point, we were able to upload all the information from Colleague into Daisy. So some of the benefits to this are student emails. We can track our data post-secondary real easily now because it's in the college information. Auditing's a little easier because of spelling, misspelling, things like that. So this is something that we did just because we felt it's the 21st century, it's time to do this. And it turned out in the end that was not a bad thing for us to have done. And it was purely because we kind of leaned and let our feet catch up a little bit. So.
Right, and that's what we're looking forward to with Target X too. Like I said, we're just dipping our toe in the water right now, but we'll get into fully implementation. I have a question for Maggie. It's an easy one. When you do that upload where you transfer digitally from one system to the other, do you keep a hard copy in a student file?
No, we everything we have goes into ImageNow, And to be clear, all of the processes, the biggest thing that we had to get approval for, and I have approval from Kathy Olson Tracy.
I was going to ask that.
I have an email. It's tucked away really nice. I have it in a gold frame. Was all the signatures, right? So when the applications came, it's looked over, and then we date stamp it with either Greg's or the administrator's last name and the date. It's looked over. Homework, same thing. We look it over, date it, store it on Image Now.
Digital stamp. Okay.
I still have not felt comfortable to eliminate hard copy altogether because I'm, the whole kind of fear factor. But I also, again, we're in the 21st century. I mean, if the federal government can keep all of my records like this, why are we held to a different standard? And this is, I'm probably going to get myself in trouble, but that's the reality of the world in which we live. We're either in the 21st century or we're in the 18th century.
Exactly. Thank you for that, because we still do print off hard copy, and just to have something in their file, because I was so scared of just, oh my goodness, are we going to leave this in the digital world?
So it's interesting. Our Image Now is set up just like a file folder. So if it's like linear. So when you have the student's name, letter of separation, oh, there it is. Homework,
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Okay, there's the homework. It is set up very much like a manila file folder. It's
I like
the
it.
only difference is it's not a hard copy, it's an image. Like I said, I'm still a little paranoid to get rid of it totally, but I know that it's
The way we're going.
it's secure. And our IT guy, who is like one of my dearest friends on the planet, because he's the one, he said, this is more secure than walking around with folders.
Okay.
So
That's good to know. That kind of gives me that deep breath. Okay, we can do this. We've got, we can move in that direction.
And I really think every IT guy should be your best friend. So
Yes.
good.
oh, yeah.
Good job there, Maggie.
What we have, thank you. We have we're a small college. So in many ways that allows us to be very light on our feet. So I don't have to go up a chain of command over and down. I can actually go and talk. Now, that said, I keep everybody above me in the loop. So nobody's blindsided, which is my responsibility. But I mean, we were talking to the programmer and, well, we got this and we got this. And he's like, well, why, why don't you do it this way? So it helps us problem solve with respect to all these issues that we were having. How can teachers grade in colleague? Well, what is the rule? Well, if they, miss so many days, then they technically don't pass, which doesn't affect their FAFSA. That was our biggest concern. We never want to impact what happens once they cross the threshold to the college. So he wrote a program that is automatic, that looks at Daisy and looks at their attendance and says, oh, click, check. He's a problem solver, and we're so grateful for him.
Yeah, that's great. And it can be a little intimidating to put your full trust in technology because we know sometimes we've all learned this year that technology can have its own hiccups. But I think it goes back to what the two of you were talking about earlier of how, well, this is the way we've always done it, which has been successful and great. But is there a better way? Is there a way with improvements and benefits? And we actually had an individual comment that they were told that as long as the student file info could be printed if necessary, keeping it online was fine. So absolutely. And a lot of times, Maggie, like you were saying, having it online could actually be more secure than having it tucked away in, a filing cabinet somewhere.
And to be fair, when we were working with Kathy, and like I said, she knows the process. I have a letter. I keep saying that because, some people, I think, like I was so afraid of it. But I lost my train of thought because somebody's popping in on me here. I totally forgot what I was going to say. Someone hand it back over to Dawn. And if I think about it, I'll write it down here.
That's all right. You were talking about the Kathy's approval and when you were with Image Now.
The signatures, that's what I was going to talk
There
about.
you
So that's everybody's biggest thing, right? signatures. You got to sign it. It's got to have this. It has a date. There are ways to do that. How do you prove that Maggie Wolf is the person who's filling out this application? You know, well, just the same thing that we all do when we register for something. CAPTCHA, right? Click every picture that has a flag, you know, and I'm not a robot. So all of those things are the security clearances that we used for our application. And as for the other side of it, the signatures are just name, date. IT has it set up so it comes in, they hit a button, they look it over. I mean, they're doing the same thing they would do with paper. They're looking it over and they're signing it and they're dating it, just like they would with paper. So it's exciting. We're actually very proud of it. So good
Yeah,
stuff.
absolutely. Absolutely. We did have a question come through. What did your programs do for testing and post-testing? What did that look like or still continue to look like during the pandemic?
I can start with that one. We had a meeting and it was all boots on the ground in the very beginning. Everyone that was CASAS trained did testing. And then we refined it down to a testing team for fall, and then we employed the testing center. And we have great relationship with the testing center. They have really helped us out. They even added a Saturday testing time for us. They weren't necessarily willing to do evenings, so we had to finagle some other options for that. But we formed a team, and we have a really great buy-in in our department. So I'm very blessed in that way. And that's how we rolled it out. And so we had, I think it was 88% of our students walked in the door got tested last fall. So that was really great.
Mhm. We do the same thing. We have multiple people who are proctors also use the testing center. I'm very grateful for that because every exposure they have to the college makes their matriculation a little easier. So testing center, we do it up here in Adult Ed. We also have one of our WIOA partners actually also does tape testing at the One Stop. So we're able to kind of, what do they say, many hands make light work. So we've kind of spread it out. And we do have I don't know if that ours is at 80%, but we're pretty solid. We're pretty strong, stronger than many folks out there. So.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for the information that you have shared with us today. I will give it just another minute or so in case anyone else has any lingering questions. You can type those in there or raise your hand. And I do also want to share that, I don't know if Amy shared this or not, but this session is being recorded, and the previous two that we did earlier in the week and last week were also recorded. And so I will share that link to where those will be posted here in the chat box. So if you missed any of them, or if you want to go back and gather some information that you remembered hearing from one of them, please feel free to do that. And so Don and Maggie, I'm not seeing any more questions coming in, but I do want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share with us and to also have such positive attitudes about the whole situation while you're sharing that information. We all know that this year has been a struggle, to say the least. And it's been a year that has thrown us all for a loop, but I'm hoping that we have all learned something from it and have taken away something that can, benefit our programs and benefit our students as we move forward in this new era that we will be finding ourselves in soon. So thank you both so much. I appreciate the information you shared. Thank you everyone on the call, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.